Hi everybody, this is Mark Moreschi with Parker Lord. We're here today to present structural adhesives for the sign industry on behalf of Lance. Thanks for joining us. Our agenda today will be to talk about Parker Lord's technology and competitive edge, some of our new products and packaging situations, and we'll wrap up with a question and answer session. But please feel free to put your questions in the chat box as we go along. We'll address them at the end. So we're going to start with our value to your customers. Parker Lord has aesthetic advantages, improved quality and durability, overall strength. We have superior product manufacturing quality as well. Basically, if your customer builds their sign correctly the first time, it increases their name brand as well as reduces warranty claims for them and for you. We'll talk about three chemistries we use in this industry. First is acrylic, second will be epoxy, and lastly urethanes. We'll get into these more deeply in other slides, but as a high-level overview, acrylics offer unsuppressed structural strength, especially for unprepared bare metals. Also good for multiple substrates, such as metal to plastic. We offer it in a non-sag, and it's sandable and paintable after an acetone wipe. Different cure methods include fast cure, room temp cure, and heat cure. Some of the substrates that we work really well with are aluminum, cold rolled steel, galvanized metals, plastics, and even glass. Some of that will need a primer before using. Moving on to epoxies, we offer superior environmental resistance, wetting and gap filling. It's very non-volatile as well as sandable and paintable with an acetone wipe. Room cure and heat cure, and it's really good for foam, fiberglass, wood, metals, plastics, ceramics, stone, and concrete. Lastly, in urethanes, they're considered a more highly elongation product, flexible, if you will, relatively speaking to the other adhesive chemistries. That flexibility gives it a higher impact and shock resistance, as well as it's a low odor product. They're also room cure temp and heat cure, and they work really well with plastics, wood, foam, and primed and painted metals as opposed to the bare metals for acrylics. Parker Lord has been leaders in metal bonding coated, painted, bare metal substrates as well as plastic and composites. We offer multiple cure speeds to fit your application, and several products require and contain glass beads for bond line control, prevent overclamping, and minimizing galvanic corrosion. We're also first to be listed, UL listed on multiple adhesives. Some of the advantages that using adhesives over welding and rivets are as follows. We can bond a wide range of mixed materials, bonding and sealing with the same products. You can actually bond right through the oils that come on some of these metals from the mills, although we do recommend, if possible, alcohol wipe as well as scuffing. Obviously, you'll get the best adhesion if the material is prepared properly, but it still will adhere and chemically etch to the metals through the oils if that's the way you choose to use it. Anytime you're welding creates heat and can distort the metal, which deforms the metal and creates rework at the end of the project, meaning grinding and needing to fill those spots before painting, whereas using an adhesive doesn't require any of that. And in a lot of cases, we're strong or stronger than welding. Advantages over rivets is that it spreads out the stress over a larger area. There's no localized stress. It's really good for weathering, provides a smooth, seamless design, eliminates leak points. Also, anytime you have a problem with a rivet, it needs to be drilled out, and that can be a time-consuming and expensive process. Additionally, anytime you drill a hole through a piece of metal and it's not filled completely, it allows access to water or other environmental concerns that can cause corrosion and rust, as opposed to using an adhesive who will eliminate these problems. Here's a list of some of the things we just talked about and others. There's no way to weld dissimilar metals. You can do that with adhesives. Again, welding creates warpage and heat, creates rework. Additionally, it requires a high skill level. So rather than hiring welders, you could hire somebody to dispense adhesive. It requires a lot less skill level. Again, lower stress concentrations in pinpoint areas, and removes the corrosion or any rust sites as well. We have labs that we do testing in. This was an actual example of a test. The picture on the left, we took two pieces of metal and they were spot welded together, and we put them in a machine and measure how much strength it takes before that bond breaks. It took 1,056 pounds per square inch of force to pull that apart, versus two pieces of metal that were bonded together with an acrylic on the right hand side. Took 4,513 pounds of strength before that bond broke. This is one of our spec sheets from the 400 series, one of our most popular products. Just to give you an idea of the strengths available, the 403, the 406, and the 410 indicate three different working time speeds. 403 being really fast and 410 being very slow. But across all three product lines, you'll find the same tensile strength of 4650. Down below, you'll see the bond performance in the different substrates, where we see aluminum to aluminum at 3000 psi strength, galvanized steel to galvanized steel at 2500, and powder coated steel to powder coated steel at 2800. When we're the only product that can go through powder coating process, 450 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 seconds, and actually we come out stronger on the other end. Several of our competitors claim they can withstand powder coating, but we've tested and we've also heard anecdotally in the field that they do not hold up, where ours does, and it actually comes out stronger after the heat. These are some of our top selling products. You'll see on the top where it says the Side Lock or Lord 40619 GB. GB stands for glass beads, and the 40619 beside it has no glass beads. It's available either way. Several different mix ratios and several different appearances. That also gives you several different types of shelf life, several different lengths of shelf life, but all of these have the same tensile strength and similar viscosities. Silock 810 we'll get into more in depth further slides, but that is a specific product made exactly for the sign industry, specifically if using it with ACM. Basically provides a lot of strength but does not create any read-through problems. We'll talk about that on the next slide. Lord 7550 is a liquid clear 1-to-1 material. It's for acrylic, it's a urethane made for trim caps. It bonds relatively quickly compared to other urethanes. It still has an extreme amount of strength as far as its tensile strength, and it stays liquid clear. It's non-yellowing. Some of our other folks in the field that we see claim to be liquid clear but end up being cloudy or yellowing or full of bubbles over a short amount of time, and ours stays liquid clear. Getting into specific chemistries, acrylics, we say you don't need to scuff, don't need to sand or prime. We do suggest it. Again, it's best practice is to sand and wipe with an alcohol wipe before. You will get the optimal performance, but it's not 100% necessary. We've been in this industry for more than 30 years, and we've held up for that amount of time under harsh environmental situations, especially road salt, salt fog or wind or rain, humidity, extreme sun, extreme cold and extreme heat. Some of our new competition on the street says that they can withstand extreme temperatures. We've started to see failures in extreme cold, especially on their products. We can also withstand chemical exposures and impacts as well. And we talked about the e-coating and powder coating. It survives up to 450 degrees for 30 minutes. You can bond through light surface oils and similar rust preventatives. It's also paintable and sandable. So how do glass beads work? They're 10 mils or 25 microns. They get in there and they're mixed into the material. There's no extra charge for them, but they create a proper uniform bond line which prevents you from squeezing too much material out. The adhesive needs a certain amount of resin and hardener mixed together to create that chemical etching and that cross-link between the materials. If you squeeze too much of it out, it doesn't do its job properly. So having those glass beads in there does that. It also prevents against galvanic corrosion. Anytime you have two dissimilar metals, the chemical reaction that happens between those two can cause galvanic corrosion. But if you've got a material in between there, a thick enough seam between there of adhesive, that resists that galvanic corrosion. Here's an application. We see acrylics used in metal. There's a sign box enclosure on the right hand side here. This one's probably 4 to 6 inches thick. We've worked with several sign box enclosure companies. One specific one that I've worked with was SignComp. Theirs comes with a angled piece of aluminum for each corner. It's got 3 holes in it, and the aluminum extrusion also has a seam on the back of it so that the bracket sits up off of the flat surface, and the 3 holes in those brackets are designed to accept the mix tip on a dispensing gun. And you put the box together and adhere the box with the acrylic only. There's no need for screws or welding, just the adhesive, and clamp it together in that short amount of time, working time, whether it's the fast acting 403 or the 406 or the 410, much slower, but it can bond and be moved to the next process in the sign building process up to 12 minutes or sooner. Works very well. This is the A10. It was designed for the sign industry. The 406-19 is really good, but on really thin gauged ACM, where the outside panel is a really thin aluminum, this adhesive works by creating heat, and before it's chemically bonded to the material, it creates heat, and that thin plastic material on the inside of the ACM can be affected by that heat and show read-through, which is basically a wavy line on the back side of the panel. That is less than appealing, and we created this 810 because it can bond nearly with the same strength, but does not create that visible line on the backside, or read through, or scrunching, or ghosting. We hear lots of different terms for it, but the 810 is there for exactly for that reason. It's become very, very popular in your industry. Moving on to urethanes. The 7542 pictured here on the right is one of many products. Has high elongation as far as adhesives go. It's extremely strong adhesive, bonding painted metals or primed metals, thermoplastic and thermoset substrates. It's also a much wider range of cure rates available, whereas the 406 had 3 cure speeds. This have 8 or 9 different part numbers, anything ranging from a minute and a half to 60 minutes of working time. Much quicker to much longer if needed. So if you have a high production rate and you're doing hundreds of pieces, you'd want to use a much faster working product. Or if you have a really large component and you need a lot of time to dispense as well as mate the products together, you'd want to use a much slower speed. And these are all available to you as well. Generally have lower viscosities than our other chemistries. They are sensitive to moisture, but they're shipped in a foil bag with a silica desiccant bag inside there to absorb any moisture. Additionally, they're shipped with mix tips, so depending on our product line, you get 1 or 2 free mix tips in the package as well. The only other component to consider when you're using urethanes is they're not recommended for environmentally resistant areas and not recommended for bare metals. Here's a handful of applications for urethanes. Trim caps on the top right there, really, especially the 7550, Lord 7550 in clear, works really well with FRP and foam as well. It's a great product in those markets. Here's some of our go-to adhesives. You saw the 7542. It's our workhorse product, really one of our top moving urethanes. It's a 1-to-1 brown. There are many of these products are available in other colors as well, if needed. Again, very strong, high elongation. This particular one has low viscosity, but we have a 7545 that's a very high viscosity. Thixotropic material can be dispensed on the ceiling or on a wall, and it's non-sag and won't run. The 7610 is our single component MS polymer material. You compare it to a tube of caulking or silicone from a big box store. Generally, their adhesion rate is about 100 to 150 pounds per square inch, where ours is, as you can see in the middle there, 550 psi. Extremely strong, extremely heavy duty. It's also has a longer shelf life as well. We'll get into this more in detail in the next slide. Here's our liquid clear 7550. Again, stays liquid clear, non-yellowing, very heavy duty, strong urethane. It's also relatively fast bonding versus some of the other urethanes in the market. The 7610 DTM is one part. DTM stands for direct to metal, so it can bond direct to bare metals, but also prime metals, woods, foams. It's very, very stretchy or flexible, as we call it. Has a very high elongation, up to 500 or 600%. Again, your strength is 550 pounds of strength, so this is an extremely strong caulking. It can be painted. Many of the cheaper ones cannot be painted. This is paintable almost immediately. It's also sandable. It does not yellow, completely non-yellowing in the sun or in environmental. It is chemically resistant. It does not have any VOCs or isocyanates, and again, very easy to dispense. One part, any caulking gun will dispense this stuff. Really, really high quality. It's obviously not as inexpensive as some of the cheap big box stores caulking tubes, but it works exceptionally well compared to them. Moving on to epoxies. This is a 320/322, a very common high running epoxy. Epoxies generally adhere to a wide range of material, but are generally used in porous substrates like foam, wood, concrete, ceramics. Very high temperature. We have some of these products that can go up to 400 F. They're also very chemically resistant. They're used inside lead acid batteries in some cases, and they hold up to that acid. They hold up to a lot of environmental impacts. Also, this is a product that's not affected by humidity when it's curing. Relatively low elongation, meaning it's not going to absorb impacts well, but it has an extreme strength. It's a very, very hard product and works exceptionally well. They can also be accelerated. The cure can be accelerated with heat. Here are some epoxy applications. The ceramic stone lettering up on the top right. We see it used a lot when people are bonding bronze plaques, let's say, to a stone. And brick works very well in brick, anchoring bolts into brick and concrete as well for different sign applications. So to get into cartridges, 1K means one part, 2K means two part, and then CX stands for coaxial cartridge. It's basically one cartridge inside another. It's sort of a sign industry exclusive. We don't see this very often in other industries except for sign. It's a very, very popular product. Requires a separate gun to dispense it, a dispensing gun, but it works very well. Here's just visuals for us visual learners. 1K, obviously, 2K. It's an exploded version of the empty cartridge on the top there, showing the plungers that push the material through the spot where the mix tip attaches. Has a little 50 mil cartridge on the right, and then a 210 mil on the center. And then again, they go up into the 400s as well. There are some products available even in 600 mil cartridges. And there's a CX to give you an idea of a CX, the inside cartridge inside a cartridge, and there's a cutaway as well to give you an idea that the one part, the resin's in the middle, and then the hardeners around the outside, the red and the blue. So a little over a year, maybe coming up in a year and a half ago, given the situation in Ukraine, they shut down a plant manufacturing the empty cartridges, caused a major upheaval in the industry. We actually weathered it better than many, where we had a lot of empty cartridges in stocks. We were able to provide cartridges long after other people ran out, but eventually we ran out as well. We were able to contract with a different supplier to provide different cartridges, but that created a need in the industry to offer different sizes. So in some cases, we went from a 375 mil to a 400 or 410 mil. Some cases we went to from a 200 to a 210. Again, sometimes this required new guns, but I know that was a hassle for many in the industry, including us. We didn't want to have to do this, but we were forced by the situation in the industry. That created a bunch of new part numbers for us, so we created a cheat sheet. You'll be able to get this from Glance within the next week or two, I hope. It's in our marketing department. Our legal has approved it. We're just adding pictures and making sure everything is 100% correct. I know you can't see this here, but I've zoomed in to give you an idea. On the top, we talk about the 210 mil 403 and 406. The next one down shows you the 403, 406, and 410, which is slow, medium, and fast. And that's available in 50 mil as well as 415 mil. But that gives you the part numbers as a quick reference to what they're good for. But on the far right, it gives you the mix tips that, in case you needed extra, wanted to buy extra mix tips, that in addition to the ones that come with it, as well as the pneumatic gun and the manual gun and their part numbers as well. And then there's the CX cartridges in the bottom of that top half of the page. And then this is a zoom in on the bottom half of the page. Talking about your 810 is available in 200 mil in a sign lock product. The gun and the mix tips. There's the foil wrapped package of the urethane. That's the 7542. Most popular in your industry, but again, there's lots of other options available with their mix tips. And then below that is the 7550, the liquid clear non-yellowing material and their part numbers. And then at the very bottom, the 7610 DTM, which again is a very popular seam sealer adhesive, non-structural, but extremely heavy duty as far as seam sealers go. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. Again, my name is Mark Moreschi. My email is here on the screen. I'm happy to answer any questions where I can through email. Feel free to link in and connect with me on LinkedIn. Your Glance reps should have my cell phone number. It's also on our website. And our another really strong piece to get in touch with us is 877-ASK-LORD. Is a way to remember it. It gets you to a human. The people that answer the phone there have an extreme amount of experience. We have one person that's been there 44 years. Gail's very active in the sign industry. She's been there 26 years. Even one of our newer people has been there 9 years. So there's a lot of experience in answering the phones in there. And they'll get you in touch with the right people to answer your questions. So thank you again for your time and attention. We'll move on to the question and answer segment now.